tells that story. We went up earlier this afternoon at about 3 o'clock in a helicopter. We toured the area. We started near downtown Reno. You can see this is the Truckee River. We are headed east towards downtown. You can see how it just takes out the streets, goes over, through, or wherever it needs to go. This is Keystone Boulevard. You can see right there how the Truckee is normally flowing under the street, and now it is kind of just flowed its banks and gone wherever it needs to go to get through. The point is, there's so much water, and it's heading towards Pyramid, and it is getting there. Now, you can see how the bank on the north-hand side, the south-hand side, is holding up a little bit better than the one on the north-hand side. You can see right downtown there, you can see this business building. There has to be water on the ground floor. You can see it has gone up to about First Street, is about how far the water has headed north there. You can see that going towards downtown. You can see there is the Columbo's block garage right there, where normally the rink by the river sits next to the river. You can see right there, that is the Sierra Street Bridge. It is underwater. That is debris on top of the road there and next to the road. That right there is Virginia Street. You can see the Mapes Hotel right there. And it was really, the downtown had changed. The look of downtown had changed so much that it was landmarks like this kind of directing you, knowing where you were. That Center Street right there, the construction there, and that right there is 2nd Street with the Automobile Museum there on your right-hand side. Now you can see that at least a block up is the ground level floor of all these buildings is underwater. Parking garages, small hotels, large hotels, business parks, everything is underwater at least a few feet. It goes back at least a block to First Street, and there along with the First Interstate Bank building, that area. The parks are underwater. Everything is underwater. This is heading out towards Sparks. You can see now this, I believe we are heading back towards town from Sparks. We'll be heading west towards downtown. You can see right there. Once again, you can see right there in the distance there, you can see the 2nd Street Bridge and the Automobile Museum on your right-hand side. Right there is 2nd Street, and it's underwater.
That's incredible.
It certainly is. Shalise, it's amazing to note the amount of debris that seems to have piled up along the bridges. You get a tree that size, a tree trunk that size, barreling down the Truckee with that amount of force. That is an incredible battering ram.
And that is part of why the water is going over the bridge, just not the fact that there is so much water, which is definitely the contributing factor here, but you get a log jam, literal log jam at the front of those bridges there, and the water just has to go somewhere, and it is incredibly forceful. You can see the park right there. You can see, I believe that green top is the stage. That's normally the stage at Winfield Park. Right.
Gosh.
And it is underwater. You can see just the look of downtown has changed. Now, if we can take a look at the airport, we swung by the airport as well. There is the airport underwater. And that's why the airport is closed. If people are thinking it's the rain, it's not just the rain. There is the runway, the taxiways. And there are some jetliners there on some high ground trying to stay dry.
We've been trying to make guesstimates at how high the water is standing in these deeper areas, Shalise, and all we can really do is use the airport, the ramps, and the planes themselves as kind of barometers.
You can see right there kind of how high it is. Those are normally the ramps that you would take, like you said, Lise, to board and depart planes, to get on and off a plane. And you can see the water was right under the doorway there. And like you mentioned, that is airline doorway high.
It's a graphic yardstick, isn't it?
Earlier we had some ground video from the airport as well, and when vehicles could move, and that was a big if, they were leaving large wakes behind them, which is, definitely boat country, not vehicle country.
Now, if we can show real quick, I know we're starting to run out of time, but if we can go to I-80, I want to show you guys the mudslide that's covering the roadway there. Actually, we don't have time for that, but the roadway is closed, the mudslide, and it really, really shows you we are isolated here. The airport is closed, the roadways are closed, Amtrak isn't running, the buses aren't running, and this is going to be, I think, quite far-fetching in its effects, not only today, the floodwaters, but cleaning up and supplies and the whole bit.
Shalise, you made a very good point earlier.
Make sure the structures, bridges, and so forth are safe before we allow the citizens back in. That's going to be the first order of business, and then probably beginning over the weekend we'll start to assess the damage. But at first we're going to make sure that the citizens are safe. So it'll be a very, very busy couple of 3 or 4 days here, assuming that the rain continues not to be a problem for us.
Also, real quickly, the City Hall today, Reno City Hall, shut down about 2 o'clock, sending employees home. Is there any word yet? Have you made a decision about what employees should do tomorrow about reporting to work?
Speaking just for myself, they should report to work. Again, we only let non-essential people go at 2 in the afternoon, and we thought that was appropriate. We would expect all of our employees to show up tomorrow. This is what the city is for, and we try to provide a high level of service to the citizens, and I think they come to expect it, and we've got an outstanding group of people here in the city of Reno, as well as the county and city of Sparks, and I know all of our troops will be on hand.
Quite a much more optimistic picture, though, than what we were talking about this morning.
Yeah, it looks pretty good this morning.
It's not headlights that illuminate this stretch of westbound Interstate 80. Cars aren't allowed here. Instead, construction crews are taking up both lanes. Here's why. During the flood, part of the freeway eroded away and fell into the Helms Pit.
The ditch overflowed, came in here, went over a dike that was constructed, and created a waterfall situation into the side of the Helms Pit. The waterfall started by cascading over this edge of the pit, and it eroded itself back towards the freeway.
Now NDOT is paying Granite Construction $1.7 million to fix the problem. Here's a closer look at what they're dealing with. This cliff is 85 feet high. In order to repair the road, they're going to build a rock platform next to the freeway. This will be used as a solid scaffolding to support engineers fixing the road. Crews are racing the clock.
The face of the hole is a sheer cliff composed of sandy silt, which will cave in further as it dries out.
This is what could happen. The erosion could work its way under the entire width of I-80, completely closing it. 44,000 cars use this stretch of freeway every day. Crews hope to have the freeway stabilized within 2 weeks. But here's the biggest problem. They're not even sure their plan will work. Just like the flood of 1997, this type of engineering feat has never been done here before. Now, many of you have actually been rerouted along Prater Way to the north of me. That all changed tonight. Cars will now be rerouted from the westbound lanes over the median into one of the eastbound lanes. Further up by the McCarran exit, you will cross back over and then use the highway on the west-hand side. Now, they are requesting that all locals stay clear of this part of the interstate. They fear that with, cars coming back and forth with, going to work and whatnot, that it's going to have huge delays. So they're asking all locals, please try to avoid this part of Interstate 80 if at all possible. Should be about 2 weeks before they can get this Helms Pit cleared up. Once again, if the way that they're trying to fix it actually works. John, back to you.
All right, Wendy Winans reporting live from Sparks. Thanks, Wendy. Well, we have one more quick note from Sparks. McCarran Boulevard southbound from Gregg Street to Mill Street is now open to traffic again. McCarran Boulevard southbound from Gregg Street to Mill Street is now open to traffic. That is a little bit of good news in Sparks. For a look at the latest river levels and road conditions, let's go to our meteorologist, Ron Percival. Ron?
And, John, still a lot going on out there. Things, are, at least from the road standpoint, are getting a little better. But let's take a look at the river conditions, especially on the Walker and, again, on the Carson below Lahontan Dam. On the Walker now, we've had a few calls from down there noting the fact that the water's not receding very much. And we kind of alluded to this earlier on, the fact that because of the flows out of the East Walker River from Bridgeport, you have to release quite a bit of water out of that. It's going to continue above flood stage in that area for quite a while down there. And also the releases out of Topaz, even though it's down a little bit, they have to let a lot of water out of Topaz Lake. The convergence of those two are upstream from Yerington, and so the floodwaters in Yerington are going to continue to be quite high for some time until they can start paring back those releases from both of those reservoirs out there. So people in that area had some reports that they've even seen the water come up a little bit, but the crest itself has moved downstream, and they begin to level off, at least in this area. They haven't really gone down too much. As it moves down to Weaver Reservoir, and then it has some capacity in it, but they're expecting to release that and heading down towards the Schurz area, and they have a flood warning down there for low-lying areas. So people in that area have to be cautious about that. Around the Fallon area, you're under a flood watch because of the releases anticipated now from Lahontan Dam, going down to that area, so that is the area now of concern down there. Most of the crest has passed down into Lahontan Reservoir, so things are beginning to ease up in this area. Now, road controls, a couple interesting things going on. The Washoe Valley area, you do have that restriction by Winters Ranch, but it also had two reports that it is now snowing out there in the valley, so that even might add to a little bit of a problem as far as road controls, and I understand it is sticking a little bit. Otherwise, not a lot of changes from the restrictions or the closures in this area, and that's going to probably be that way for some time to come because most of the closures are due to road problems out there. So anyway, I'll get to the radar in just a few minutes, and John, I'll be back with a detailed forecast
Well, all across northern Nevada, the pictures have been telling the story, but the best way to get a real idea of how damaging this flood has been was from the air.
What is your destination?
Destination is Carson Valley.
Departure frequency 119.2.
Taking off from the Reno-Tahoe airport's not a problem anymore, but the problems still remain all across our region. Floodwaters washed away the land around the Helms Pit in Sparks and continue to take pieces of the freeway with it. It will cost at least $2 million to fix and could take 2 weeks of work. The industrial area of Sparks also suffered damage. Business owners are slowly being able to come in and check out the damage. Much of the floodwaters remain. As we head south, more signs of devastation. Hidden Valley residents are hit hard by the flood of 1997. The area hit most recently, residents who live along the Walker River. Above the Mason Valley, you can see the homes submerged in water. The Walker River was the last of our local rivers to let loose its wrath. Residents along the Walker will soon be dealing with the same problems as people along the Truckee and the Carson, checking out the damage left behind and starting the long process of cleaning up.
Administratively, but on the street. City officials will meet tomorrow at the Reno City Council meeting to talk about the flooding issues. They have added an emergency item to the agenda. In the meantime, workers on the street are seeing firsthand how 3 days of flooding undid years of hard work. It's hard for anyone to look at the complete devastation of Wingfield Park. Torn out trees, the footbridges destroyed. The amphitheater is in pieces. The lawn is buried under mud and silt. But Mark Spiker finds it especially heartbreaking. As a groundskeeper for Reno Redevelopment, Wingfield Park was his pride and joy.
We had full of grass, we had trees coming for it, we had new landscaping, we started putting bigger river rocks and things in some of the high traffic areas to kind of, you know, dress it up, make it look better. Like we've already started planning for next year by planting more trees, and now there's nothing there to get ready. I mean, everything's gone.
Employees have worked around the clock to return downtown Reno to some semblance of normalcy. Most bridges are open and traffic is moving again.
Can't disturb these coils.
The ice rink is under mud, but it may reopen soon. City workers aren't just cleaning up the mud, they're also trying to track down property that was carried away by floodwaters. This 1,000-pound planter ended up on Virginia Street, but it started out a block away on Sierra Street. Authorities will discuss cleanup and funding at Tuesday's City Council meeting. Paperwork will demand much of their time for months to come. Meanwhile, people like Mark Spiker work in the shadows of redevelopment signs that suddenly seem ironic, within sight of the park they were so proud of only a week ago.
Trees are gone, posts are gone, benches, walkways, or big ditches, everything's gone.
Now, throughout all of our flood coverage for the past few days, we have been talking to these workers, and I know they were working 12-hour shifts. Now they have cut back to 10-hour shifts, and they tell me they are finally starting to get some rest. Lisa and Bill?
But, Vicki, they were working really long shifts even before the flood hit, weren't they?
That's right. If you remember during the snows, they were down here cleaning up after that. They were also assigned to clean up after the New Year's Eve celebration, so we swung right into the floods after that. Some of these people have worked for weeks without a day off.
All right, Vicki, thank you.
Thanks, Vicki. The Reno Redevelopment Agency was already scheduled to hold a meeting tonight at 6, but flood issues are not scheduled on the agenda. The first extensive flood discussions will happen at tomorrow's Reno City Council meeting, which begins at noon.
Last week's rain pounded us. It made some of the streams and riverbanks overflow their banks. And this area known as Helms Pit along I-80 was one area to suffer some damage. As you can see, there's construction crews that have been working round the clock to fill a 200-foot deep sinkhole that swallowed up part of the interstate. Crews are filling that sinkhole, and they're saying they're going to try to stop it from getting any more of the interstate before it crumbles away.
Wow. Hundreds of thousands of tons of rock fill. By the time this thing's all done, it'll probably be about in excess of 200,000 tons.
All that's what's needed to fill this gaping sinkhole, about 200 by 200 feet wide and 85 feet deep. As it grew, it tore off part of the interstate. The director of the Nevada Department of Transportation says he's never seen anything quite like this.
This is indeed a 100-year flood. I guess this is the sort of damage you expect once in a lifetime.
Anything that you learned from something like this that maybe 100 years from now we could do a little bit differently?
I don't have anything that I know of. I mean, Mother Nature's Mother Nature.
It's this damage that's reduced Interstate 80 to 2 lanes in both directions. It will stay that way for the next 2 weeks.
Please don't watch. Consider alternate routes such as Gregg Street and Crater Way, and keep your speed up. Usually in a construction zone, everybody wants to slow down to 15. Everybody slows down to 15, we're going to have a traffic jam from here to Bird Eye on one side and from here to Fernley on the other.
Now, as you can see, crews are working around the clock, and they're telling me that this cold and dry weather is helping them tremendously. The reason for that is because it's letting them dry everything out and letting them pile more and more dirt, as you can see. And I just spoke with some of the crews, and they told me they're a third of the way done, and they're already ahead of schedule, only 2 days into this construction process. Lisa and Bill?